so, Megan, if you want to chime in at any time, we would welcome your expertise. But if you would rather just attend as well, that's totally fine. But my name is Alyssa Fisher. I am the Director of Communication for Cal-Pac, and I am hosting tonight with my friend Melissa Jackson, who is the Director of Marketing at GCFA. And I met Melissa last month at what we call our quad training for GCFA, so our quadrennial training. It was the first time that communicators were invited, and we basically got to sit around and talk about communication in the UMC for like 2.5 days, and it was really great. And Melissa has so much knowledge that I plan to tap into for months and months to come, but I said immediately I need to get you on a learning lab. So we are here with Melissa tonight. If you haven't been to a learning lab before, I just want to let you know that this is a series of webinars that we launched last fall with the goal of providing you some really hands-on tools for leading your ministry, whether you are a clergy person or a lay leader or just want to be more involved in your church and help out. These are tools for a variety of audiences. Tonight we're talking about church websites, so that is a tricky topic, but and one that can be quite overwhelming. And I'm just really glad that you're here today. This is sort of the middle of our spring sessions. We started a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to continue through April with this session, and then we'll have a few sessions leading up to annual conference. But I'm just really glad that you're all here tonight. And I want to again let you know that this session is being recorded. So if you don't want to be on camera, feel free to turn that off. We do have a chat at the bottom of the screen, and you're always welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question out loud. So let me go ahead and launch our PowerPoint. I'm doing it all tonight. So those of you that have been here the past few weeks know that I'm usually not leading and facilitating. So here we go. All right. Okay, so church websites 101. That's what we're talking about tonight. And again, I am Dr. Alyssa Fisher. I am the Director of Communication at Cal-Pac. And here with me tonight is Melissa Jackson. She's the Director of Marketing at GCFA. And tonight we're going to be talking about church websites, but we're really talking about this from a very beginning perspective. So whether you need to start from scratch or start over or just make some changes to your website and want to know if you're on the right track, that's sort of what you should be here for tonight. We are going to talk about kind of the main questions or the things that we think are the most important, which is always subjective. But I also just want to let you know that when designing tonight's session, we really tried to keep in mind that this can be a super overwhelming topic and something that you don't always have a lot of time or energy for. And so we wanted to keep it simple and just give you a few tips to get started. So we're going to talk through some best practices of websites in general. And then I have 2 very important pages on your website that I want to talk about. And then we will get into that topic of SEO or search engine optimization. And then we'll talk about upkeep, like how do I stay on top of my website when I'm also trying to write a sermon every week and lead Bible study and make sure that we have a budget that's being met and all sorts of other things that are happening in your church when it's really easy for the website to fall by the wayside. So that is what we're going to cover tonight. And so I'm going to pass it off to Melissa to talk about some of our introduction best practices.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alyssa. I'm so glad to be here with you all. I'm in Nashville, so it's a little later here than with you, and my kids are all tucked in bed, and I'm drinking some tea, and I'm hanging out with you all, which is a perfect way to spend an evening. So let's start first with branding. I'm sure you all understand that branding is it's what you tell the world about your ministry. And one of the first things that I want to talk about is sort of authenticity. Who you are as a church is essentially your brand. And every church, even though you are United Methodist Church, which also has a brand of its own, your church specifically has a unique brand in your community. And when people hear the name of your church, or they see your logo, or they visit your website, or even engage with your church online or in person, it tends to evoke a certain feeling or a certain way of understanding. And so the impression that you've left on them is your brand. And it's really important that your website is authentic to your brand. So as you're building that, that's going to look like making sure your logo is consistent and the fonts are consistent and the colors are consistent. And all of those things are going to join together to sort of tell the story of your ministry. The other thing is keep it simple. That's a relief a lot of times when people hear that, especially when website building is not their number one job. So keeping it simple tends to be a necessity. So it's really great that it's a best practice. When visitors come to your site, you really want them to be able to find answers quickly. The most common questions for churches are, service time, location. So accommodating this, you keep your site simple, so your visitors can find that information quickly, familiarize themselves with who you are. They then feel a lot of times after they've been able to do that simply on the website, they feel a sense of freedom then navigating the additional information. Then also they get a picture of kind of who you are really quickly. And then when they do come visit, they don't feel like strangers right away. Another best practice is to include calls to action. In my marketing world, we call those CTAs. It's great to tell a story, but you want to call people to specific actions. So, if you have a prayer request, submit them, and you have a form for that. Sign up for our newsletter. These are all calls to action, and it's really important to have those throughout your page so that people are engaged and they're not just consuming content, but they're also engaging with you. And then the good thing about that is that most of the time, depending on your call to action, there are ways for them to then get their information to you, and it creates a relationship at times, or a digital relationship is what I like to call it, so that there's communication flow, which is always really helpful. And the last thing in terms of best practices, unless there's another slide and I can't remember, but it's really important that your site is mobile friendly. One of the things that when I'm building a site that I always do, and I use a platform that makes it super easy for me to do this, is I make sure that the site is responsive. And what that means is that when I open it on mobile or a tablet, it looks how it needs to look. It doesn't need to be shrunk. It doesn't overflow, and not all platforms do this. So it's really important that when you're designing your site and you get it looking exactly how you want it on your desktop, which is where most people would design, you also just want to check that the platform you're using is mobile responsive. And if it's not, then you're going to want to make sure that you have a way of looking at the mobile and tablet version of your site so that you can make sure the design is consistent throughout. And also, excuse me, when it's responsive, it doesn't just shrink to fit the device, but a lot of times what that means is that it optimizes for the device itself. So that means it doesn't just shrink your text, right? It can reorder how your text flows. It can reorder pictures. It just makes it better on mobile for people to be able to look at it and interact with it. So mobile friendly and responsive websites, very, very important.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm going to put a link in the chat that covers a lot of these same things if you need help remembering later on. But I also want to remind you that in addition to recording these, we do compile all of the resources we share in the chat throughout the call. So I'll be sending those out later this week as well. Okay, so our very important pages are, what do we think? Can you put in the chat or unmute yourself? What are the two most important pages on a church website? Either to you or that you think I might be thinking of. What would be two of the most important web pages on your site?
Contact and donate here.
Okay, contact, donate, right? Service times, contact. Home and about. I like this. Contact us, online worship info, worship time, contact info, homepage, ministries page. Great. All right, I'm going to go one by one. So my first one is going to be your homepage. So some of you got that right. And I heard Jason Moore say this at a training last fall. He said your homepage is the new front door to your church post-COVID, right? So before anyone ever comes to your church, they are most likely going to Google you. Maybe they won't. Maybe they're just going to stumble in the door. I actually saw that happen a couple of weeks ago at Hollywood UMC. These people stumbled off the street into the church, and that was great. But most of the time people are going to Google you, right? They're going to at least need to find out when the service times are. And that is why that's the number one thing on my slide here as well. The number one tippity top of your page thing on your website should be what time your services are, what day they are, because that's not a given either, right? I love a Saturday night service. Don't have too many of those these days, but what day, what time, where are those services going to be? What's the address of your church, right? If you can put a picture of your building, right, that's a great sort of way to set the place of your church as well. Where is your home? What does the building look like? What am I looking for? When I visit North Coast UMC, I know that I'm looking for that huge like water tower steeple thing that you all have there. And you have that right on the front of your website, John, and I think that's great. So we know what we're looking for if you have a picture of your church building there. The second thing that I would say should be on your homepage is a link to ministries, or at least a description of some of your kind of key ministries, right? And I like to think about this as you describing how are you involved in your community and how can I get involved in my community, right? Because we all know that church is not the building. Church is the people, and church is the way that we're engaging in our community out on the streets in our towns. And so, does your church have a food pantry? Very important information would be when are you serving people at that food pantry on your homepage as well, right? Do you have a children's ministry that children can go to? Do you have a Bible study weekly? Do you have a book study? More and more churches are doing book studies, which as a big reader, I love that as well. So make sure that you have kind of your key ministries highlighted on your homepage as well. And make sure that this again, has information on how to join. So do I call the church office? Can I just RSVP online? I will say San Diego First has a great way to RSVP for basically anything on their website, and it makes you feel like it's really simple to get involved and really simple to get started. The third thing that should be on your homepage are other communication channels. And again, I'm going to emphasize these should be kept up to date. So if you have that Facebook link, but you haven't posted since Advent or before, maybe it's time to start posting again, or maybe it's time to take it off altogether, because we want to make sure that we're putting our energy into channels that we can keep up easily. I would love to see, and I do love to see live streams on your homepage. If it's just embedding your YouTube playlist or your Facebook link or something like that, making sure that people can get a sense of who you are and also see who you are, right? A newsletter link. This is something that not a lot of people think about, but if you're sending out a weekly newsletter to your church, that is a great thing to link on your homepage as well. And again, these don't all have to be like big pictures embedded. They can just be links to these things to just help people get a sense of who you are, as long as they are kept up to date. But my church uses MailChimp and they send it out every week. And so that would be a really simple thing. And it is a really simple thing for them to add that link to their homepage, or MailChimp will actually create a archive link automatically for you. And so that gets updated as you send out your emails. So adding those other communication channels is important too. And then contact. I think every single person had contact in their guests. Obviously, we want to know how to get in touch with you. Is that, are we calling the pastor? Maybe not. But is there a person that we can contact for more information, whether that's the office or an admin? And I would really suggest an email and a phone number, because a lot of people, myself included, don't want to make a phone call. So if we can email you, we will. And a contact form is fine, but that can sometimes feel like an extra step to say, oh, now I have to figure out what I want to say, or where is this going to go? Does this actually go to a person? When you have that email address, you at least know it's like an email address that it's being ideally delivered to somebody. So contact information is important to have on there. There's one thing that's not on this slide that should be on your homepage now, specifically right now, that's seasonal. Does anyone know what that might be?
Lent.
Lent, Easter. When is your Easter service? When are your Holy Week services, right? If you're going to have
Mhm.
any sort of Holy Week services, then those times should be on there. But maybe there can be like another page that has an explanation of what those are. Not everybody grows up in a tradition that has Holy Week services that are quite robust. But definitely have those Easter services because people are making their Easter plans now, especially folks who maybe only go on Christmas and Easter. They might not even know when Easter is. So they're like, it's the end of March. Easter hasn't happened yet. I got to figure this out. I'm going to look up that United Methodist Church down the street and they'll tell me when Easter is and when I should show up. So make sure, please, that your Easter services are on your homepage and really easy to find and that you take them back off after they're done. Um, and I'll say again, this sounds like it can be a lot of information, but a lot of this is going to be static, or there are ways um, to automate this, right? Like with the MailChimp links and things like that. Megan shares that in San Diego, they get those special services up 6 weeks in advance, and it helps with their SEO, right? If people are Googling Easter services San Diego, that's going to help them out a lot. Great, thanks, Megan. Anything else that people think should be on your homepage? Real pictures, yes. Pictures of your actual church. Pictures of people at your church if they are willing to pose for them, right? Even if you can only get one family to say yes, having a photo of those 4 people, take it really close. Yeah, real photos of your church is really helpful. Great. Anything else that you should have on your homepage?
This is Megan from
Hi.
First Church San Diego, and
Hi,
I just
Megan.
wanted to underscore what you said about the live streaming. We always make sure that our most recent sermon and our digital Bible study, our podcast, are up on the homepage so that people can see um, like our current teachings and theology. Um, we find that that's actually helped to get a lot of people into the sanctuary. So they will watch a couple of live streams before they decide that it's a safe place to visit.
Ah, that's a great point, right? When you can test out church from home, you might as well. Good point. Thanks, Megan. Okay, so our second VIP page, and I actually don't think I saw this in any of the answers, but my second VIP page is your visitors, your I'm new, your start here, your first time people. Um, there are a lot of people that might come to your church if you make it really easy for them. If you, again, have that service info and you're going to see, right? My 2 things on both the pages, the number one thing are the same. And those can be copied and pasted. And it's okay to have the same content on multiple pages on your website because guess what? Most people aren't clicking around on all the pages. Right? So they're mostly going to 1 or 2 pages and they might not even scroll all the way down. They might not scroll at all. So having that service info at the tippity top of both of those pages will really help you out. In addition to having service info, I love to see a getting here. Where do I park? What does it look like? Where do I go into the building? Which building is it? Um, is there anything weird about how to get into your church? I was visiting a church the other week that is kind of off of a frontage road. So you turn off the main road and then you have to go behind a bank to get there. And I never would have found it. Honestly, if I'm running late, which I typically am for church, I'm really trying to get there before they start announcements. Like, I'm not going to make it. So make it really easy. Describe exactly where people need to go, where they can park, how they get into the building, and then what to expect once they get in there, right? A friend of mine, one of my really good friends, asked me the other week, what happens at a Methodist church service? So what happens, right? What can I expect to happen? How long is this going to be? How much of a time commitment is this? Um, what kind of music are you going to be playing? Do I need to know the songs? Is there some sort of fellowship time that you have after your service? Is everyone invited to that? Is that just for guests? And where do my kids go? Are my kids staying with me? Am I handing my kids off to some strangers? Do I need to register them ahead of time? Am I going to be expected to give you money? You know, some kind of think about this from the perspective of somebody who maybe has never been inside a church before, right? And how would you explain that to them? What are they going to go through when they walk into your building, right? So if the more you can walk people through step by step what to expect when they get there, I think the more comfortable that they might feel trying it out. And then that leads me to the last one, examples. We talked about this a little bit on the homepage, but have a live stream or a recorded video example of your service so people can watch and know what to expect. If you have a bulletin that you use or that you create every week, including that is really helpful. My church, and I will say this is a church where I'm a member. I don't help them out with any of this stuff, but my church puts up the bulletin a few days before the service as soon as it's done on the website. So you can kind of see, like I can check and see, is my pastor preaching this Sunday? Or, you know, what's happening this Sunday? Are we doing communion, right? Talking through communion and what that means at United Methodist Church might be important and who's allowed to participate in that. So the more that on this page you can engage people and make them feel safe and make them feel at home before they ever get there, the better that's going to go for them. What else do you think should be on this page? What else do you all have on these kinds of pages on your site? Or what do you wish was there?
So something, this is Megan again from First Church San Diego, and something that we have is just some brief information about, you know, who we welcome, what we believe, um, to help people again understand our value statement. And then we also use it kind of as a funnel to get into some of our deeper pages. So we highlight some of our programs, but not that many. It's really to take you to high level pages that list all the groups so people can start to drill down and see where they can find a place at the church. We also, at the bottom of our I'm new page, include a form. We have contact information, but then there's also a form that someone can fill out. So then they have, you know, those options of how they like to contact people, because like you, I don't like to call anywhere at any time. But we do have a phone number for those that would like to, as well as the email address or just, you know, filling out the form. So making it easy for them.
Great. Yeah. And John has a great comment in the chat about videos on communion. He has a suggestion from Chuck Knows Church, but that's something that you can kind of outsource or you can pull in from somewhere else, right? It doesn't have to be, you know, for many of us, communion in the United Methodist Church is pretty similar, right? And so you could share a video from any other source. It doesn't have to be made by your church, or you can share resources from other churches, and kind of borrow from there to get what you need for content. Great. And then Larry suggested that comment box or button. Yeah. And I think to Melissa's point about calls to action, kind of breadcrumbing, which is getting people to keep going on your site by having links to other areas like, you know, our ministries, or I'm trying to think about what else there might be, but you know, those live stream links, things like that. Other information you could have on this page, which I think is optional, but others might disagree, would be information about the staff or your pastor. So that could be a good kind of a next call to action button on this page as well, is learn more about our staff, learn more about us, learn about our pastor. And that could go to another page on your website that has kind of an introduction to the people that run the church. Cool. Any questions about these two pages? And of course, these are not going to be the only pages on your website, but I think these are the two that have the potential to make a really big impact to visitors on your site. Okay, great. A question in the chat about Bible study classes, time, weekdays, study subjects. Absolutely. I think that getting people into Bible study can be one of the most difficult things, even beyond getting them to come to church on Sunday, right? Because they think, oh, these people have probably been in a Bible study together for years and they don't need any new people, or it's not, they're in the middle of a study and they're not welcoming to us. And so, especially if you are, starting a new series for Lent, you started a new series or something like that, I think definitely having information about your Bible studies, about your other ministries is really important. And also, if there's a good time to get people, new people involved, definitely highlight that as well, because I always love to see that, right? Awesome. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So I'm gonna pass back to Melissa to get us started talking about SEO a little bit. I think for many people, this is one of those like mountains that's the top of it is in the fog. And you're not really sure what SEO means or how to get started. So I'm gonna let Melissa take this one.
Okay, well, just hundreds of thousands of people in the US search churches near me every month. And so when we talk about search engine optimization, what we're talking about is how your ministry gets to be on that first page when people search. And that becomes critical, especially when you consider the ministry and reaching out to your community and and also getting people engaged in events and in services, especially things like Easter. So search engine optimization is essential to your website. And a lot of churches, especially smaller churches, don't have the tools or they don't understand it, and so they don't do it. So how does a church get its website to appear, after users in their market search on Google? So like if you think of Google as if you think of the internet as a massive library, you think of Google as the librarian. As new books enter the library or new websites enter the internet, the librarian will review the books, right? And correctly categorize them, and then add them to the catalog and place them sort of in their appropriate location in the library based on the subject, right? Well, similarly, the search engine optimization helps the librarian, helps Google, because let's be honest, that's the one we're using pretty much most all of the time, but it works for other search engines like Bing and Yahoo. They know more about the content on your church, so it helps them know more about the content on your church's website. So what they can do then is they can add your church, your pages, the pages on your website to different search engine queries and put it basically in its appropriate location on the web. So Google essentially then uses robots. Doesn't this sound so crazy? Like we're like, in Star Wars or something, but they use robots essentially across the internet. They crawling robots across millions and millions of website pages. And then the robots work to find, they identify, they categorize all of the content on every website page. And after the robot then defines all that information or indexes it, Google records the findings and saves the website page in the index. So the SEO process then empowers and equips your church or your ministry to basically use keywords that essentially position. So you have some control over this, right? So you use keywords and that helps position your church within these queries or these searches. And it helps optimize the search so that you are put in that index in the appropriate place. Now, a lot of website platforms have plugins or widgets that help you do the SEO. I build sites on Wix. Wix is a platform that I use. And what I love about it is that it's super intuitive for SEO. It gives you literally step by step. You open up this portion of the back end of the site and it says, what are your keywords? And then it will help you figure out what are some good keywords. And when you're thinking about keywords, you're thinking about things that are unique to your ministry, but also have mid to high search rating, search value. So for instance, if you are in San Diego, one of your keywords might be San Diego and one of your keywords might be United Methodist Church. And so when somebody Googles United Methodist Church in San Diego, maybe then your church becomes one of the top on those pages. The thing that you need to really think about, and when you're doing this, is like where you put these keywords. So all the pages are indexed, and then you have to start adding these keywords to your headers, to your the pictures you use. You might think, well, why does that matter, right? But even the metadata on your pictures, if you have your keywords, it helps increase the optimization. So once you kind of hone in on what those keywords are, you're really going to start putting them strategically all over your site. And that just basically helps Google index your pages and starts moving them closer and closer to the top of that query. That's really high level. And if you have questions, I will try to answer them. But that's really high level on SEO. Any questions on that? Any like scratching your head, or even any advice? If you've sort of gotten the SEO down pat on your site, what have you done to sort of make that work for you, and how has it worked?
Yeah, I think if I could add, like, one thing is number one, all the content that's already on your website is already helping your SEO, right? Google's already looking at everything that's already there. And so that's a good thing. You've got a good start. Where you might want to get sort of next level on SEO is adding in those keywords, which will be in kind of like a back end of your WordPress site. We use WordPress at Cal-Pac, so those are all going to be kind of at the bottom of my page of every page builder. And that's where you can add in kind of the things about like San Diego, Easter, United Methodist Church, family friendly, you know, community church or something like that, even if that's not in your name or in the content that you're adding. So I don't
Yeah.
know if Megan or John, if either of you want to jump in with any tips that you have at the churches that you're working with. Don't want to put you on the spot, but would love to hear what you have to say.
I was just typing something in the chat, but it might be easier if I say it.
Hmm.
This is Megan again. I was just gonna say another thing that I have learned over my years that's really important is how you name your pages, especially with what's going to show up in your navigation and in the URL. A lot of times we have these fun names for our ministries or programs that kind of have to be in the know to know what it is, right? Like prayers and squares, that's not intuitive to someone that isn't already part of a church that has that prayer quilt ministry. So we have a prayers and squares chapter here at First Church, and for the name of the page, I have it as prayer quilt ministry, because prayer quilt is something that someone might be looking for more so, and also you don't have to be in the know, right? But then on the page itself, in the header or in the description, that's where I can say prayers and squares. Another example is um, our middle school and high schoolers. We call them students first. When I first started working here, I thought that meant it was a college student ministry. I had no idea that was like our youth group, right? So now we combined the pages that we have for the younger kids and the middle and high schoolers. And I just named that page kids and youth, because that's what parents are looking for, right? What is there for my kids and youth? And then on the page itself, we can talk about and use our internal kind of branded program names. That way, um, it's intuitive, and it's going to be picking up those keywords that people are looking for when they're searching. Maybe they just moved to the area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on a really key thing, which is who is your website for, right? Your website is for both new people and for your members, for the people that come every Sunday for the last 30 years, right? So we want to have a balance of that insider and outsider language. And so even when someone's navigating your website, like those words at the very top of your page or on the side, those words should be more outsider language or more kind of language that anyone can understand. And then on the pages, it's better to use that insider, the fun puns of names that we come up with within our church ministries. Great.
I would just add that something we're working on is to have our website be where we are now. And so actually it seems counterintuitive, but like removing in aspirational language, like if we want a thing but don't have it right now, that are that what we're putting out there authentically shows where we are now, so that we're not attracting people we're not attracting people for things we don't currently have. And so there's sort of that conversation, who are we now, who do we want to find, but like what do we have right now that will appeal to people, so we're not catching people that we're not ready for, if that makes sense. But being, like was said earlier, really authentic where we are now, what we have now, and who can come right now and feel like they belong.
I love that. And you're so right, because when I'm building websites for local churches, I'll often get, well, we really want to have more young people in our church. And my first question is, well, what do you have for young people? Because your website is not going to be the thing that, like, it could be the thing that brings young people in, but it's not going to be the thing that keeps young people in if there's not a place for them already. So ministry always has to come before communication, and ministry always has to be the groundwork has to already be laid before anything can be on your website. I think that's such a great point, for sure.
Great. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about how we maintain these websites. How are we keeping them up to snuff, right? And Melissa's going to talk a little bit about things like domains and security, which might feel a little bit advanced, but these are actually things that we need to be thinking about as we're creating a website, and that if you don't already have in place, would be something that we want to get in place quite quickly, because it's really important to be able to maintain ownership and be able to maintain simple things like people within the church being able to continue to have access to it or get access, especially as we all live in the United Methodist Church. And so we sometimes have new pastors coming and you want to make sure that those new pastors can have access to your website. But go ahead, Melissa, chat about this one.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things when we're building sites for local churches that we come across is churches are so excited, and we get all of their intake information. They show me the website they have now, and we talk about ideas, and then we start to build, and I say, okay, what's the login for your domain? And they go, I have no idea. They don't know. 9 times out of 10, it's because they were using a volunteer who was gracious enough and had the know-how to set all of that up. And then the volunteer, either moved away or is no longer part of the church. And it is like, we think it's this person's name at gmail.com, but we're not sure. And so we kept running into these issues with domains. So it became really important for us to address these on the front end before building a site, because we'd have these beautiful sites and then no way for people to see them, and it would be really difficult to get them launched. So just a couple of things when you're talking about your domain. I know you all know, and so I don't hope I'm not patronizing when I say that your domain or your URL is the name of your website. So www.yourchurch.org. So when you're registering your domain, you always want to use your church's name and an official church email address, one that doesn't change as your pastors change, right? Maybe it's office@church.com or info@church.com, something that even as people and personnel and volunteers change, the email address stays the same. It's also important to securely store your domain and login information, renewal dates, payment details. I'll have somebody say, I think my domain's in GoDaddy, but I don't know. So I have to go do all of the deep dive search to figure out where their domain is registered. And so it's really good to have like a place where you store all of that, that's securely stored. Don't put it in a Google Doc that can be easily hacked or shared. But have a place where people can access it, but securely. Also, when you're thinking about who pays for your domain, a volunteer could be willing to cover the cost, which is wonderful. but it can also create confusion down the road. So like if a person leaves or forgets to renew the domain, or let's say they're using their credit card and their credit card it expires, and now your church website's down because the domain's not being paid for anymore. So it's best the church handles the payments directly, and if there's somebody willing to take on the cost of that, to have them donate that um, rather than manage that on their own. Most domain registrars offer the option to set up automated renewals. It's I recommend taking advantage of this to prevent domain from accidentally expiring. But again, you're going to want to do that on some kind of like a church credit card, or you don't want it to be attached to something personal. And turnover is inevitable. It's going to happen, whether it's church leadership, volunteers, or staff. And that's, why it's really crucial to have a transition plan for domain management. Again, keeping all the information in a notebook. I mean, this is where pen and paper or printed paper actually ends up being a great resource, filed away in a cabinet somewhere. And then if your church loses access to the domain, whether for turnover, you're forgetting the credentials, you'll need to contact the domain registrar immediately. One of the things we've had happen is they don't have a way to even contact the domain registrar, so they have to start over with a brand new domain. We've had churches do that, where it was like they literally are locked out of access, and so we have to start over and get a whole new domain. So the original domain with the name of their church is no longer available to them. They can't use it. So that's just a few things just to keep in mind, best practices around your domain. You don't want to get caught, if it's time to rebuild your site, or maybe you want to change platforms. It's really good to have all that information really close at hand and not specific to any one person. So hopefully that's helpful. Any questions about that? It's pretty cut and dry, but you'd be surprised. I mean, we love the benevolence of people being willing to help us, right? We just need to make sure that we do that in a way that benefits the church long term, not just financially, but organizationally too.
So I can chat a little bit about keeping your website up to date. So one of the things that helps me in kind of my process flow with whether it's the Cal-Pac website or something else is just having a regular time on my calendar to review the website and make any updates that need to be done. So I actually do this weekly, but you probably won't be doing it weekly unless you're trying to keep things, if you're adding manually adding your service bulletins or your live stream videos, things like that, you will be doing it weekly likely. But at least I would say every other month, you want to just take an inventory of your website, make sure that there's anything out of date, right? Take off those Easter services or add in your summer Bible study series. Whatever you need to do, just take a day, take half a day and do that. And that will really kind of, I think, take the burden off that feeling of, oh, I have to make those website changes. I have to update our website. Oh, we probably have really out of date information on the website, and trying to feel like you need to find a big chunk of time to do that. Just having a regular time on your calendar to keep that up to date would be great. And whether that's, a volunteer that's doing that or a pastor or an admin, if this needs to be a team, have it be a part of one of your regular meetings or set up a regular meeting for it. So I think that's really a key thing, is just this should be a regular part of the maintenance of your church, just like any other piece of the maintenance of running your church. And I think that will really help a lot.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
There are a few key areas where you can kind of do that without burdening somebody with constant updates. If your pastor is a writer, or if you're doing like having your live streams or videos, like having those just kind of load, those refresh every week. So that's a new thing on your site. Any kind of blog entry, and it doesn't even have to be like a written blog, but a blog just from a functionality perspective, where you're uploading information. So even if you decide that you like to keep your current bulletin up, if you post a PDF of your bulletin, that's one thing. What you could do is actually type out your bulletin in a blog post and have that every single week. And that's just updating and refreshing your site every week. And a lot of times what I like to do is if I know a church is doing something regularly, I like to make sure I'm pulling that into the homepage, because when they update it, regardless of where they're updating it, if it pulls into the homepage, then that's refreshing that homepage, which is where people are, new visitors and people who are Googling are coming in to your homepage. And so they're getting that new information every time. So those are just two, like your live streams or videos, and any kind of like a weekly, even if it's an event you have, like if you have a men's breakfast every Thursday, having those things come in and change regularly and update even on your homepage is great. And that, just going back to SEO, that's also going to boost your SEO as well, having refreshing the information consistently.
Yeah, that's a great point. It kind of builds into something else I was going to say, which is why social media is on there, which isn't really part of your website. But the more that you can build in these workflows to maybe take photos that you're posting on your social media and putting them on your website, or taking a blog post and making that into a short social media post, the more that you can kind of create a workflow between the two, the easier it will feel to maintain both of them, if that makes sense, because you're recycling content across your platforms and really making it kind of just part of the life of the church to keep those two things updated. Megan said in the chat that she blocks off 30 minutes Monday mornings to update that e-newsletter link, add the sermon, add the podcast, 30 minutes on Wednesdays to add the bulletin in the live stream, and just having those reminders are really helpful. I do a similar thing on Wednesdays is when I upload the learning labs, but Fridays is when I take care of any requests that have come in, right? So I also have a form on our website where ministries will send updates that they want on their pages, right? Whether that's a task force or a strategy group. And so I do that once a week, all in a block together. So, and I let folks know when they submit those, it might be a week before it gets done, just because that's my part of the workflow. So if you have different pieces of the website that you want to set to update at different times, that's great too. But kind of my key takeaway here is to set up a process and a dedicated time to do this so that it doesn't pile up and become overwhelming.
Something I would jump in and add, if you
Yeah.
have volunteers and others doing this sort of thing, have steps written out. So like as transitions happen, you don't have people go like, we don't know how this person did, especially somebody who's really talented and is doing lots of things. Like, we don't know when they did this. We don't know how they did this. But if you have a document that says, here's what's expected on Mondays, then as you grow or as staff shifts, you have a picture of what's actually happening. And then you can teach and skill up others to take on pieces of that as you grow and as things change. If it's not written down and it's just in somebody's head and they leave, then you sort of lose that that habit, that rhythm, and that institutional knowledge.
That's great. Yep.
On MailChimp, they give you the option to on the back end of MailChimp to just use the URL to embed on your website so that you can make a page where all your newsletters are available. So it just automates and updates on your website. So that's what we did at the Julian Methodist Church.
Yeah, the more that you can automate, the better, right? And I think the same thing too, if you're uploading or you're live streaming on YouTube, you can just automatically add those live streams to a playlist and then have that playlist embedded, and that will automatically update for you as well. So truly, the more you can update, the better, or update and automate is really the key here.
Alyssa, do you mind if I jump back on security? Because I think
yes, do it.
So one of the other things, you guys know your URL, it starts with HTTP and then there's an S there. And that S is indicative of your SSL certificate that tells people that your site is secure. If that S isn't there, you'll get that dreaded triangle with the exclamation point. And if you're a site that takes donation or even that links out to a page where you receive donations, like if you're using Venko or PayPal or something like that. So even if your site doesn't receive the donations, but it links to the site that does, um, people will notice that, and they will see that it's not a secure site, um, and they will be hesitant to use it. So make sure that you have that SSL certificate, that you have that S at the end of your HTTP in your website. Most platforms make that part of what you're doing. So like for instance, like I said earlier, I use Wix. That's all part of getting your website launched within Wix. It's not even something you really have to do. It's just something that comes with it. But if you're an open source site or you're using a platform that doesn't have that, you really do want to make sure that you get that SSL certificate.
Yeah, and the domain and the SSL can usually be bundled together in whatever, if you're using GoDaddy or um, there are a bunch of other ones. SiteGround, I don't know what you are using, but whatever your program is where you're buying your website address, you can usually get a lot of that stuff all bundled in together as well. So they're really helpful. All right, we have some folks in the chat anxious for our example websites. So I think that's what's next. Let me make sure. Yes. So I'm going to show two example websites from Cal-Pac, and then Melissa has, I think, three to show as well. And we're just going to walk you through a little bit of why I think these sites are great. I didn't make either of these sites that I'm going to show. I do have a screenshot here of First Church in San Diego. Megan, did you guys recently redo your site? Because I was on there today and I just thought, oh, this is really nice.
That was my labor of love last year. We
Oh,
launched it. Launched the new site, which you have the screenshot of in August, and it
okay.
did take me. It was like a good 4 months that the project was going on. While I just made sure everything was organized well, that we got the updated images and started to not just
Yeah,
rely on stock images, etc. So
absolutely.
it takes a little while, but it's worth it.
I'm still very hard at work at my labor of love of the Cal-Pac website. It's coming soon. But so this site that I'm showing now is from Downey UMC. They had, I think it was a local person make this for them, but they relaunched this in the fall sometime, I think in October maybe. But you know, they have kind of this great drone footage of their website, which I know, or of their site, which is not feasible for everybody. But you get a really good idea of where you park and what the building looks like and where it is in the town. And it really gives you a great sense of place of where you're going. And I want to let you know that, you know, they do have the I'm new here at the top, and we'll get to that in a minute. But on their homepage, they have lots of photos. They have a picture from a baseball outing, it looks like. They have a picture of the church. Their main thing that happened this past year was their anniversary. They have photos from inside the church and outside the church and the playground, right? So they're really, this is a very simple homepage. This is the whole thing. There's not much to scroll. There's not much to really figure out about. They do want you to know more about their church if you click on that. But yeah, I'll put the link in the chat here, but I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the page here. So I just want to point out that they really give you a kind of grounding sense of who they are right from that homepage. So if we go to I'm new, which I said was my second VIP page, they want to introduce you to themselves a little bit, right? And so they're talking about what they believe. They're talking about sacraments. They're talking about when their worship services. You can tell it's an hour. This is where they're going to be. They're going to have hymns. It's going to be kind of traditional. I know you probably can't read this, but that's why I'm chatting you through it. um, and they had this homecoming celebration. This information I will say is like a little bit out of date because they had it in September. But credit to them, if you go to this page, it is now talking about how they did have this celebration. So they've at least updated this piece. But I just wanted to show this is not a big, aside from the drone footage, I would say this is not a big flashy site. It's pretty simple in terms of what they're showing you. They're really just trying to share a little bit about themselves and get you to come in the door. The second page that I want to show you is North Hollywood, First UMC, and I'm going to put that. Oh, Megan says having questions in your headers is great SEO. So that is great, because if you're asking questions of Google, it's going to bring you back to questions probably. So great point there. So North Hollywood, they have, again, a picture of their church right here. I absolutely love their homepage, because the very first thing, again, this is the very first thing you get to. Where's their location? Their Sunday worship is at 10:30. Here's how you get in contact with them. They have the address here. They have a little bit about who they are. Again, in bold, they say Sunday mornings at 10:30. And then they have a picture of kids. They're talking about their children and youth ministries. They're talking about two kind of things that they have going on with after church and with Love Thy Neighbor. And then we scroll a little bit further down, we're going to get another video about them. Then they get into their events. So I think they do a great job of kind of bringing you in, giving you what you need to know, and then putting you on your way, if that's all you're here for. On their new here page, they have a what to expect. In bold, again, they have Sunday at 10:30. They have park in the south parking lot. You can click on that. It will take you to a Google Map link so that you can get directions. They talk about, they have a courtyard where you can stay until the service starts. You can email us at admin@nohofumca.org. You can scan the QR code to follow them on social media and watch their online services. So I think, again, these are, first of all, I want to say no website's going to be perfect, right? No one's going to follow every single thing. You have to make things work for yourself. But I really like these two websites because they give you kind of that exact sense of here's who we are and here's how you get here and what to expect when you get here. All right, Melissa, I'm going to pass it to you. Do you want to do, which one did you want to bring up?
It doesn't matter the
Okay.
order. Yeah, you
Okay.
just. So one of the sites that we built, this is Endless Mountain Drop-In Center. It's a youth center in, I think, New York. And so we built this website for them. We had a lot of interaction with them. They wanted it to be something fresh and something exciting for young adults. So as you can see, youth ages 11 to 18. So it needed to be fresh. If you could hit that refresh button real quick, because it has some animation too, which I think we built that in specifically because of their key audience. And you can just kind of scroll through it. It's just really the first thing you see is pictures. The first thing you see is that call to action, volunteers needed, what they believe. Keep scrolling, and you can see also the thing I loved about this site was the branding. They really just pulled in the colors and the brand all the way through. Now, if you look here, who we are, what to expect, newsletter sign up, these are immediate quick calls to action, and then they have their social media at the bottom. And then at the very bottom, typically what we like to do is put all the contact forms in the footer. The reason we like to do that is because when you do that, it shows up on every page. And then if you want to scroll back up, you can kind of bounce through some of those pages. So who we are, and then so you have this, the About Us page is like a landing page that gives you high level, right? And you kind of see these little things they kind of animate through. You get good pictures, a lot of white space, makes it easy to navigate. But then you also have the drop down on About Us where you can get into the specifics. So you've got what to expect. That just gives a great sort of high level, like here's what you can expect when you come to our events. And then again, you go right to that contact page. And then the staff, I love building out a staff page. I go to a staff page on everything that I do. I love a staff page. I love seeing people's faces. I love knowing who I'm going to see when I go. And so built out the staff page. And then I think if you just want to kind of scroll through the rest of those, they're really pretty simple.
And I will say these are going to look a lot smaller right now because we're screen sharing in Zoom. I am putting all the links in the chat so you can visit the sites yourself as well if you wanted to look through them um, and be able to read a little bit more because I know it's really tough to read on screen share.
One of the things that we like to like one of the things that I like to do is if you don't have a lot of pictures, so like for instance, it would be they would have to get waivers from all of the youth that come in order to get their pictures on the website. And since they're not specific to any one church, that's really difficult for them to do. So we use things like icons when you don't have permission. We try to float icons like that would be considered icons throughout. And then you don't want to always use stock images. A lot of times that it makes something fall flat. But you can see there that we still had to use some images because images matter and people connect with them. But iconography is really helpful too when you're using a site and you don't have all the pictures that you would typically want to have.
Absolutely. All right, so we have Bethany
This,
UMC.
yep, this is a church in Reedville, Virginia. This is another build that we did. You can just kind of walk through it. I'd love for you to hear, like for you to see what you like since you haven't seen these.
Oh, sure.
What to expect. Meeting our pastor and our story is right up there at the front, which I think is good.
Yeah, so it looks like it's oh yeah, so if we click on join us, so that's their title for the new I'm new here kind of first visit people. So like, they have the service times here. They have the watch online if you want to join them online. Um,
One thing that we do a lot is use anchors, and we'll navigate to the anchors. So like from the homepage, what to expect. It didn't take you to the top of join us, repeat, where then you have to figure out where it is. We build an anchor in right to where we want that to go. So what that other thing that helps us do is we can have that bigger landing page like join us, right? But we can direct people to specific things as we feel like that's necessary. So we're not building like an individual page for every little thing. We can still keep it fresh on that landing page, but then the anchors help navigate. And with Wix, I don't know if other that you can actually have URLs for your anchors, like outside URLs. Like I could put it in a link in a MailChimp and it would take you to that anchor, which is really kind of cool. So
yeah, that's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll do one more and then I think we just have a couple last points and we'll have lots of time for questions if people want to ask questions.
Yeah, and this is just a really small church in Smyrna, Tennessee. It is like the bare minimum of what we would do for a site.
I love that they have a ton using that video the video of their services is great. That's something that, most people have right now, right?
Yep. And then I love how they use a bunch of pictures. I think that's really helpful in this scenario for you. If you're like, well, what is immediately it's a small family church. And then even as you go through the top, this will give you like, I think the About Us section might have its own page. And what we did was built in, so they have another video about the church that they have, and then they have a Meet the Pastor section. And that kind of gives you his direct contact, shows pictures of his family. And then there is the history. A lot of churches that we build for want to have history because they are historical churches. And so even though that's long and it's hard to read, it's really important for this church that people understand that it is a historical church. So yeah, those are just some examples of websites that we've built as well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Let me get back to our slides, but I don't think we have too much else happening on our slides. We really have some time for questions, and then we have a couple resources. I will say you've heard Melissa say throughout the call that we build or that when they are working with churches, and so GCFA does have a local church website building service that they run that I think is one of the more affordable ones I've ever heard of. Um, and so if that is something that I know at least one person on the call that is looking for that right now, and so if that is something that you're looking for, Melissa is sort of the main contact for that. So I will make sure to have her contact information on the screen now. And then there's also a link or a flyer for their services as well. So this wasn't a big sales call for Melissa. It really was about helping you have information for your church website. But I did want to offer that service and highlight it in case that is something that you all are looking for. But if you have questions, we'd love to spend some time answering them now. And other suggestions, other things that you want to share as well, we'd love to hear.
Linda Grell from St. Paul's, Tarzana. I want to talk about customer service and customer support on these platforms. And the reason I'm asking, I don't know anything about websites, by the way. I just tuned in to learn. But anyway, years ago, we got locked out of our website, like what you were talking about. And there was no way to get back in, and there was no way to delete it. So don't any of these platforms have customer service you can actually talk to and prove who you are and, have them get you back into your website?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is the reason why when I work with building sites, that I use the platform Wix, their customer service is great, but also that's just the platform. But we all, like, for us, we would also be part of the solution to run interference when something happens. Alyssa, you guys use we were actually just talking about it. What is it that y'all use for your website? You said WordPress?
Yeah, we use WordPress.
Is there a localized way to get support for it?
There's some community support, but we're actually in the process of moving to a business that's going to be providing a lot more of that support for us because we are doing a lot of it on our own right now, and that's tough.
That would
Yeah.
be great.
Yeah.
So to your point, like I think a lot of times, especially if we're dealing with a smaller church, it we need it to be cost effective, right? We can't spend thousands of dollars on websites. That's just, it's not helpful. But the one thing that I do think that, to your point, that's really important is that when you do find a platform that you like, so there's two things I'm talking about here. The platform, which is what's basically holding your site. So Wix, WordPress, Brick River, these are all platforms, but these are not necessarily always the people or the institutions that are going to build your website. So we are a company that will build the site and we use the platform for Wix. So you have twice the support there. So, this isn't an ad for us. I'm just giving you an example. If you decide to go with something like a Brick River or even Aboundant, you just want to make sure that you're not just getting the service or the platform, that you also have somebody who's sort of a go-between to help you with building, because building a website, if you're not familiar with it, it's not necessarily an easy task. It can be once you've gotten in there and worked in it a little bit, but it can be pretty daunting. So I do think there are some great platforms that do offer great support and some other parties that help with building sites that offer great support. You are going to have to pay a little bit for that, be very wary of the free platforms.
Yeah.
And to go back to what was said earlier, what you can do on your end to get good customer service is to have that one email address tied to everything that is, an official one, because sometimes customer service can't help you because it was, previous pastor's email and all these other things. So that's something that can really help you get the best support regardless of who is trying to help you.
Yeah, and I think the question that you had, Linda, about like proving that you own the website, that's where having, like John is saying, that one email address and having things that are owned by the church rather than by individuals comes into play. Because if it's a previous pastor who owns the website link or owns the website, and they're no longer with the church, then you don't have a way to prove that you own it, right? Because it's the church, the previous pastor or a previous volunteer that really owns it in the eyes of the customer service.
Well, the previous pastor
yeah.
should be able to prove it, and a lot of times they're around, you can get a hold of them. They just can't
If you can
remember
get a
or
hold of them,
whatever.
yeah, if you can get a hold of them, absolutely. That's a big issue that I've run into, is that the pastors at their new church, and they're not very responsive. So that's why it's really important to have logins and emails and things that are connected to a church address and not an individual.
Yeah, we do that now. That was
Yeah.
way back when we were starting, with the
Yeah.
webpage, and an individual pastor just started it with their own stuff.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
There's a question in the chat about building websites that are targeted specifically to most of the folks that are in our churches, right? A little bit older folks. And I think my suggestion here would be keeping things super simple, right? Keeping the information that's on the website really simple, because when we're, no matter what age group we're dealing with different devices. And so we're dealing with a lot of tablets, we're dealing with phones, we're dealing with different computers at different ages and from different operating systems. And so keeping the imagery, keeping a lot of white space, keeping the amount of text and the buttons and kind of those bells and whistles really simple is going to help with being able to adapt no matter what technology people are using, and their kind of comfortability with that technology. Melissa, do you have any suggestions for designing a website for older folks?
Yeah, this is gonna sound so silly, but make the font big.
Yeah, that's our number one comment in the chat, right? That the fonts are too small.
Mhm. Make that font bigger, man. They love, like, it is a real thing. And like, even my parents are in the baby boomer generation, and they're pretty technologically savvy. But even they don't intuitively know how to make that font bigger with their device. So I would say that make things really simple and clear. And I would say keep your page count to a minimum for an older audience. Like 5 pages on your site is plenty when you're dealing with an older audience. And the other thing I would suggest too is it's always really helpful to poll your congregation. What are the things that you want to see on the website regularly? Um, Surprisingly enough, video of your service is always it's not just the younger people who are into that. A lot of older people really connect with that, particularly if they're not always getting into service. And a lot of times they like to share them with their friends. So, and Facebook is really big with the older generation. So um, having that connection between Facebook and your website is really helpful.
Melissa, how big is a big font? We have in the chat. What's our number? What's a number?
Number, man, it's so funny you ask. I mean, because my monitor that I look at every day is gigantic, and so I would say start at 20 point.
Okay.
Start there.
Yeah.
And I would say start there with that would be your paragraph.
Yeah, that would be the normal text.
Paragraph text.
Mhm.
I would say that when you're talking about headers and subheaders, that you would go, I mean, you could go as big as 50 easily on a header.
And I'll say, like, again, we're screen sharing. This is a very small area that you're looking at, but the body text in this presentation is 30. So we're looking at,
Yep.
I'm sure that was small for most of you. Megan, were you going to chime in on something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you are updating your website, doing a major update, that communicating out to your current congregation is critical. And so that's something I did last year. Actually, before we updated the website, we hosted a series of what we call digital workshops for our congregation, just to help them understand all the places we can be found online and how to interact with each of those platforms. And I did step by step, this is how you get on YouTube. This is how you would watch our live stream on YouTube. This is how you find us on Facebook. And this is some things you can do to help grow our reach with those posts on Facebook and again with Instagram. And then also I created a PDF that was like step by step that someone could print out at home and they could practice. And so we did that again when we were updating the website. I recorded myself just explaining where everything was at because they were used to the previous website, which had been in place for, I want to say, almost 10 years. And I completely changed the navigation based off of what new visitors would be looking for. But because it was such a change, I knew that everyone would need to know where to go. And so I put together a resource guide for them with, you used to go here, but now you're going to go over here instead. And that really helped with explaining why we were doing it, to get everyone used to it and minimize any potential feedback that you know that you're going to get.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like it's a communicator's job to get people to get people excited about going in a different direction rather than afraid of it, because 10 years is a long time to have one website. You know, like so much technology changes that it's going to be a big change. I would imagine that was a pretty big change after 10 years.
Other questions, best practices, comments?
Are you going to have contact information about all you guys so that we can call you up and say, help?
Melissa is going to be your best contact.
I mean, here, let me say this, that while I do work at a UMC agency, which oftentimes feels like very unapproachable at times, I want you to know, like, even if you're not using us to build your website, if I can be helpful, please email me anytime, literally anytime. One of my favorite things to do is interact with local ministries and learn what people are doing and to be helpful. So yeah, please do email me anytime you have questions. And if I can't help, I will try to do my best to find someone who can.
Well, bless your heart. That is so wonderful. I just love it. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, we got another question in the chat. UMC Westlake Village has a WordPress website designed about 6 or 7 years ago, and you're planning a complete redesign, researching different companies specifically for church websites. Yeah, the cost does vary a lot. I will agree with you there, Carol. And so, I'm going to be honest that I have been recommending GCFA to local churches in our conference. There are a couple of other folks that I can recommend you to, and I'm happy to include those in the follow-up email as well and on our resources for this webinar. I'll have to look them up and put them back in the chat for you. I don't have them ready to go in the chat is what I'm saying, but I really do think that WordPress is a great platform, and you can always change your theme, which is just going to change the way that your website looks and works without losing your content on WordPress, which is a really great benefit. And so that might be something to think about as well. There are lots of church website companies that work on WordPress and would be able to kind of work with you on that migration, but I'll be happy to, and I'll make a note to put some more recommendations in the follow-up email.
Yeah, I mean, we love to work with local churches, but there's plenty of other. Subsplash is one that's really intuitive and helpful, and Tithely is one especially if you want to connect your giving to the site. So those are some examples. Yeah, I mean, for me, WordPress, I've been designing sites for a while. My background is design and communication. It's not code. So I get a little lost in WordPress, but I mean, I know a lot of people who really love it. So I think it just depends on your level of comfortability and honestly, how much it mimics the things you're doing every day, if that makes sense. Like for me, I like Wix because most of the programs I'm in, day out, work very similarly. So it was very easy for me to learn.
Okay, Megan is sharing in the chat ministry brands and realm of website platforms. I also know that, and this is kind of like a next level thing, but if your church is using something like Planning Center, oftentimes those are an all-in-one solution for your church, and they will have website integration as well. So there are quite a few options
And an
And
app with that one.
and an app with that one.
Ministry Brands is a partner of United Methodist Churches through GCFA. We have partnership
Okay.
program. So that one you might actually be able to get some preferred pricing.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I've used Wix at previous companies and it's really, really easy. And it's come a long way since its beginning as well.
It has. Yeah, I see what you're saying about WordPress. I've struggled with it so much, and I tried to build my own site on it, and I just kept hitting roadblocks, and it was frustrating because it was like I feel like I should be able to understand this, and I wasn't. But
And you know what? I will say maybe your really super easiest solution is Canva has a website design
yeah.
option, and they have kind of this landing page option as well. If you really just want one page that's going to show your service info, Canva and churches get free Canva Pro as well. And I'm happy to help anyone get through that process as well. So, like I said, we'll send out a bunch of resources with our follow-up because I know we're throwing a lot at you if you have questions. If you're looking for an answer, we've just given you 10. So that's not very helpful, but great. Well, we have a few more minutes. If anyone else, Pamela, you know
Well,
how to
I'm
get a
the
hold of me.
finance chair of St. Paul, so I'm interested in cost.
Oh.
You kind of referenced it before, but could you just
Sure.
give kind of a ballpark of what various things cost when you're dealing with websites?
Absolutely. I will say GCFAs, I think starts at 750. Is that right, Melissa?
Yep,
And
that will get you a 5-page completely custom site on Wix. And then there's a platform fee for Wix, which is about $17 a month, and they bill it annually. $17 a month is a really good price for a platform. I don't know, what do you guys pay for WordPress? I mean, if you don't mind asking, you may not want to.
I don't mind your asking. I don't have a clue. Sorry.
So we at Cal-Pac are paying several $1,000s a year for our website, for various things.
For reference, if you go to gcfa.org, that's a really big site, and we built that whole thing on Wix.
Yeah.
So, and that was for, now we do the premium price, but it's not thousands and thousands of dollars a year. I mean, you're talking, I don't know, maybe $1,000 a year. I mean, not even. So those kinds of options are there, and so I think now if you were gonna hire me as a freelance designer to build your website, I would charge a lot more than $750. I would say if you can go with somebody, whether it's GCFA or anyone else who has that design or building feature built in, it's going to be better. A freelance person, like I said, I would charge you $5,000 easily to build a church website.
Yikes.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like if you go with one of these other places and platforms, you get a lot better pricing because they're doing it on a much grander scale.
Thank you.
Carol, I see Carol has her hand up. Did you want to ask a question out loud?
I was just going to say the research that our main person has been doing shows these three options for pricing: $1,700 to $3,300 one time for initial design, then $42 to $55 per month for robust ongoing service and support. Option 2 is $97 to $297 per month, includes initial design, depending on the level of service desired or required. Option 3 is $297 per month with a 12-month initial commitment, site design included. Option 2 include $10,000 monthly Google ad grant would be at a price point of $597 per month. So
Yeah.
and that was his best three. he found some others that he wasn't too fond of that
Mhm.
were 7,500 to 15,000 to set $25,000 for design plus 300 to $1,000 per month for maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
crazy.
and so, I mean, I think it really depends too, do you need someone to build this for you, right? If you're really, and that, again, I really want to say this wasn't a sales pitch for GCFA, but the idea of them building you a site, knowing that it's a church website, they know you as a United Methodist Church and who you are as a client. I think it's a really great option. It's very affordable to have someone that's building you a site.
Right.
You can certainly build a site on your own for much less, right? You can go to Subsplash, you can go to Wix, and you can set it all up for yourself for a few $100s a year. But you're gonna have to build that, and you're gonna have to add all the content, and you're gonna have to decide what the pages are and pick all the photos and all of that stuff. So, how much time versus the resource of money do you want to put in?
Yeah.
Right.
The other part of it is we include training in our cost. So that would be something I would also really advise you to look for, because if somebody's going to build you a site but they're not going to help you maintain it, then they need to train you on how to do it.
Right. And
So
we've been used to doing some of it ourselves, some of the updating ourselves, and we want to
Mhm.
still be able to do that.
yes,
So,
and you should. This is the other thing is, like when we were building out this service, we wanted to be able to say, we'll do the heavy lifting and then hand you the keys and let you train you how to do the normal upkeep of your site. But then also, we're just a phone call away if something breaks. And that's not, we don't charge for that. It's just part of being in the part of the connection, right?
Mhm.
Like if something breaks and we want to help you fix it. And I would say, again, whether you use GCFA or not, make sure that you're getting that level of support, to your point, Linda, because if you don't, it's so, you'll be so quick to run into little issues. And if you don't have a background in web development, it's tricky for me sometimes. So and I've been doing this for a little while, so yeah, I would make sure that you have support, and I would make sure training is definitely part of it. And even if they just have a whole like even if they just have like a bunch of tutorials that they've produced to teach you, that's fine if you're somebody who can do that. But I would make sure there's training involved.
right.
In a slightly different direction, but
Sure.
I know once you have a website, training congregants on how to help capture content is also a big deal. Like you can't refresh when you don't have anything. So teaching people how to take good pictures of events and things, where to send them, maybe it's a shared Google album that people have links, but keeping good content and training your congregants that maybe like taking pictures, or maybe they're retired writers and they'd be good at blog kind of thing, kind of stuff. So tap into the giftedness that you also already have of people who might not see that as a ministry, but when you teach them that this is our front door, this is how we reach out to people. You might find that there are other people that maybe aren't in leadership right now that would really help with the updating, with the content creation, if your ask is specific and doable.
That's an excellent idea.
That's great.
Well, we are almost out of time. Thank you all so much for this very good conversation. I appreciate you all being here tonight. I'm going to put one more link in the chat, which is our Learning Lab Hub. And so the recording and all the resources will be up on this page probably Wednesday, right? I said that's when my calendar appointment for adding these recordings to the website goes up. So probably on Wednesday, it'll be up there. I'll also, because we're at the end of the month, I'm going to be sending out an email with all of the links to the recordings and resources for the sessions that we had in March. And I do want to invite you next Monday. We're going to be having Brenda Smotherman from UMCOM. She is a PR lead for UMCOM, and she's going to be talking about promoting your church event. So writing press releases, using social media, connecting with media to have them come to your church event and help get the word out. So she'll be here next Monday evening. I hope that you'll be here with us as well. And I hope you all have a great week and a good end to your March. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. Nice to see you guys.
Thank you.